The galaxy had always been a place of calm, while relatively speaking, intergalactic peacekeepers like the Alanthar Dominion had a good grip on things until the humans arrived. They were loud, brash, and, most importantly, unpredictable. It was this last trait that made them the target of so many eyes in the vast expanse of space. So, when the Dominion's High Command intercepted a strange, bouncy transmission from Earth, a place still crawling out of its primitive, war-torn history, it was clear something had to be done. Admiral Clorbax stood before the glowing, ever-expanding star map of the galaxy. His species, the Alanthar, had seen civilizations rise and fall. They'd crushed rebellions, negotiated treaties, and smothered uprisings before they even thought of gaining steam. But this was new. He crossed his tentacles, his many eyes narrowing at the Earth marked with a red circle on the map. "What do we know about these humans?" Clorbax asked, his voice a soft, guttural growl. "Not much, Admiral," responded Ezix, his tactical officer. A small, rat-like creature whose species had the unfortunate distinction of always looking like they had just stumbled out of a trash bin. They're primitive, underdeveloped in comparison to us, and seem to be in the midst of an industrial revolution. They've made no formal treaties with anyone. A bit wild, honestly, Clorbax sighed, a low rumble vibrating through his six-chambered chest. "They might be wild, Ezix, but we've seen this before. Miscommunication leads to disaster. We cannot allow them to get any ideas, especially after that transmission." The transmission had been a strange one, a garbled mix of static, followed by what Clorbax could only describe as a series of confusing exclamations. Words like "hell yeah," "let's rock," and "game on, you overgrown space lizard," had been peppered in between what seemed to be a lot of laughter. The signal had come from Earth's most peculiar yet powerful vessel, the USS Washington, a ship that had somehow managed to secure a foothold in space. No other species in the galaxy seemed to have this mix of confusion, aggression, and a peculiar disregard for conventional decorum. The message had made its way across the galaxy with the finesse of an elephant doing the cha-cha. "We should send a clear message, Clorbax," Ezix said, his tone dripping with caution. "One they can't ignore." "You're right," the Admiral replied. "This will be their lesson in galactic protocol. Prepare the fleet. We'll declare war." On Earth, General Sarah Whitmore sat with her feet propped up on her desk, sipping a cup of coffee that tasted suspiciously like burnt rubber and disappointment. As usual, she was behind on paperwork. It had been a week since they'd sent out the transmission to the distant stars, an innocuous message meant to commemorate the completion of the USS Washington's first successful long-range mission. What did they get in return? A formal declaration of war. "Sir," her aide, Lieutenant Jimerson, entered with a stack of official-looking paperwork. "The Alanthar Dominion just declared war on us." She blinked. "Wait, what?" "You heard me. They say we're a threat to galactic peace. Apparently, our diplomatic methods were unsettling." General Whitmore leaned back in her chair, stifling a chuckle. "I'm sure our diplomatic methods are terrifying. Did you hear the sound of that transmission? Half of it was us yelling at the speaker when it broke down. And they're calling us a threat?" The lieutenant tried to keep a straight face. "Yes, ma'am." Whitmore shook her head in disbelief, setting her coffee cup down on the table. "Well, this is a first. Did we try to send them a message back?" "We did, ma'am. Unfortunately, it seems their translation device only picks up on threats and, well, more threats." Whitmore laughed, the sound echoing through the command room. "Of course, because when you hear 'game on, you overgrown space lizard,' the only rational response is war." She looked around the room at her team, all of whom had expressions that were somewhere between stunned and trying not to lose it. "All right, folks, let's see what these space lizards are really made of. I want every ship on standby, and I want to be ready for anything. I'm not about to let some arrogant alien species tell us what we can and can't do, especially after they've been eavesdropping on our kitchen table conversations." She paused and added, "You know, we do have a few tricks up our sleeves. Let's remind them of that." Jimerson raised an eyebrow. "Tricks, ma'am?" Whitmore flashed him a grin. "We might not have the most advanced weaponry, but we've got something they don't. Sheer, unadulterated chaos. I'm going to send them a message they'll never forget." Back on the Alanthar flagship, the great battlecruiser Talon of the Void, Klorbak stood again before the star map, the reality of war beginning to settle in. He'd expected a quick, painless operation, followed by a few lessons on peacekeeping. He did not expect to be facing what felt like an entirely new form of warfare. "Sir," Ezek said, nervously fiddling with his many claws. "They've responded." Klorbax took a deep breath. "Put it on the screen." A grainy transmission flickered to life. There, in the center of it, stood General Whitmore, grinning like a cat that had just discovered the garden sprinkler system. "Hello, Alanthar," she said, her voice calm, yet somehow almost too friendly. "We've received your declaration of war, and while we appreciate the enthusiasm, I'm going to have to tell you, this is the wrong species to declare war on. Not only can we kick your tentacle behinds, we'll do it with style, a few explosions, and some rock music. So, good luck with that." The transmission ended with a click. Klorbak stared at the screen for a long moment. Then, as if struck by a sudden, brutal realization, he said, "We might have made a terrible mistake." And with that, the war between the Alanthar Dominion and humanity officially began. The Alanthar fleet surged forward through the stars, sleek, silent ships weaving in perfect formation. Admiral Klorbax paced back and forth in his command center, tentacles twitching with growing frustration. It had only been hours since the declaration of war, but already something didn't feel right. The humans, as expected, had scrambled to put up a defense, but their response had been so odd. "We're about to reach their outer defenses, sir," Ezek reported from his station, his voice cracking with anxiety. "Our fleet is ready to obliterate their ships. We should be able to send them a message they'll never forget." Klorbax gave a slow nod. He had seen many wars, but this was different. Every encounter with humanity seemed like a new riddle wrapped in a problem that didn't exist. The fact that they had dared mock the Alanthar in their first response only made the situation worse. Yet Klorbax had made a decision. War was war, and it would be over quickly. "Very well," Klorbax said, straightening his posture. "Engage the human fleet. Let's see what these monkeys can do." General Whitmore stood on the bridge of the USS Washington, arms crossed, watching the chaos unfold on the view screen. The Alanthar fleet, vast and imposing, was barreling toward them. The stars outside shifted into a line of brilliant lights as the alien ships swarmed the space around Earth's outer limits. "They really did it, huh?" Whitmore muttered to herself with a smirk. "What a bunch of morons." Beside her, Lieutenant Jimerson checked his console, looking up with a nervous glance. "Ma'am, their fleet is coming in fast. Our defense systems are ready, but it's going to be a challenge." Whitmore chuckled, shaking her head. "Challenge? You think the Alanthar are prepared for what's coming?" No, ma'am. But I've been hearing some rumors about our new improvised defenses." I know. Just give them a little time." At that moment, the first wave of Alanthar ships opened fire, bright beams of energy slicing through the void. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, if you had the perspective of someone not about to die. But the USS Washington had something the Alanthar didn't: Earth-style improvisation. "Brace for impact," Jimerson shouted, but his voice was drowned out by the sudden explosion of sound across the bridge. The first shots from the Alanthar splashed harmlessly against the ship's shields, which sparked and buzzed like an old toaster in the middle of a storm. Whitmore's grin only grew wider. Now we fight." The human counterattack came not with sophistication or high-tech weaponry, but with sheer unpredictability. The Alanthar had expected a quick, decisive strike, a show of power and precision. Instead, they got what appeared to be a cosmic version of an unsupervised toddler with a laser pointer. The first human tactic? Ramming speed. The USS Washington's engines ignited with a brilliant flare, and it shot forward like a torpedo, a fully armed, highly advanced, yet somehow ridiculously human torpedo. One of the Alanthar cruisers, having underestimated the human ability to maneuver, found itself unable to avoid the massive ship plowing straight into it. The crash was anything but graceful, causing the Alanthar vessel to buckle under the force, its hull sparking and buckling like a soda can underfoot. The Alanthar flagship, Talon of the Void, watched the carnage unfold, the image of the massive collision flashing on their screens. Did they just ram us? Clorbax asked, dumbfounded. I believe so, Admiral, Ezix answered, blinking. That's highly unconventional. Clorbax's mandibles clicked in irritation. Unconventional? That is what they chose to do. Well, I suppose we could call that mildly effective. Mildly, Ezix said, then paused as another ship in the human fleet launched a volley of missiles straight into an Alanthar destroyer. The resulting explosion was so large it lit up the space around it like a mini-star. All right, maybe extremely effective, Ezix amended, quickly punching commands into his console. On the USS Washington, Whitmore watched the chaos on the view screen, tapping her fingers against the armrest of her chair. I knew it. I just knew they'd try to crush us with their superior technology. But they didn't expect us. The underdog. She turned to Jimerson, who was trying not to grin like a child on Christmas morning. I want every ship in the fleet to pull the same trick. Give them a taste of their own medicine, except, without the taste part. We're going full human now. The lieutenant nodded. I am. Full human mode engaged. The human ships took full advantage of their unpredictable tactics, dodging incoming fire and countering with precision, or as much precision as a species that had invented duct tape and Pop-Tarts could muster. Ships veered wildly off course, fired missiles in erratic bursts, and used everything from makeshift bombs to unexpected electronic warfare. Anything to throw off the Alanthar. The Alanthar, to their credit, fought back hard. Their ships' energy blasts were relentless, crashing through the void like storms over oceans. Yet the humans' erratic behavior turned their predictable fire into chaos. A few ships had already been knocked out of commission, but for every loss, the humans returned with a vengeance. They had learned the most important rule in warfare: never fight your opponent on their terms. Instead, they fought on their terms, however ridiculous those terms might be. Back on the Alanthar flagship, Clorbax pounded his fist against his command chair, a growl of frustration vibrating through his body. This can't be happening. How are they doing this? They're adapting, sir, Ezix said. They're not following any predictable battle tactics. It's like they don't have a plan, but somehow that's the plan. Clorbax's face was a tangle of confusion and fury. No. This is not possible. We've crushed entire empires with more than this. What's next? They start throwing rocks at us? Well, Ezix began carefully. They did just launch a set of entirely unshielded rocks toward the outer defense perimeter. Clorbax stared at him, and then at the screen, where the incoming barrage of human missiles continued to explode in beautiful disarray. He was losing this battle, and more frighteningly, he was losing to a species that had seemingly no concept of battle etiquette. Give me a secure line to the High Command, Clorbax ordered. We need to rethink this, or maybe we need to send someone to figure out what the hell is going on with these humans. Something is wrong here. Something strange. Indeed, Ezix replied. I believe you just learned the biggest truth about humanity. And what would that be, Ezix? They never play by the rules. As Clorbax's fleet continued to struggle, the humans took a small, ridiculous victory, and for the first time in the battle, something resembling a smile tugged at Whitmore's lips. Well, that wasn't so hard. Time to see what else they've got. The war raged on, and the Alanthar were no closer to victory than they had been when they'd first declared it. Admiral Clorbax's nerves were beginning to fray. Every tactic he tried seemed to have been anticipated, or worse, mocked by the humans. The latest humiliation came when a small human vessel, the Luna's Lament, had managed to disable one of his flagship's advanced plasma cannons by somehow sneaking up behind it, much to the confusion of the Alanthar crew. I've seen every maneuver, every counterattack, and still these humans come at us with new tricks, Clorbax muttered, his many eyes scanning the chaotic battle unfolding outside the viewing window. What is wrong with them? Ezix, who had long since given up on understanding human tactics, adjusted his translator and spoke with the calmness of a man who had already prepared himself for another impossible task. They refuse to fight like anyone else. There is no rhyme, no reason, only madness. but effective madness. Clorbax thumped a fist against his command chair, nearly toppling the fragile object. We cannot keep up with this insanity. Their methods are utterly unpredictable. Every time we think we have them cornered, they find a way to turn it against us. What are they doing? Meanwhile, on Earth, General Whitmore was standing in front of a map of the galaxy that now looked like an abstract painting. Swirling lines of human victories and alien losses, drawn not with strategy, but with pure, stubborn persistence. Her expression was calm, though anyone who knew her could see the flicker of something dangerous behind her eyes. A species unwilling to give up, no matter how outgunned. "All right, folks," she said to her team, keeping her voice steady. "It's not over yet. The Alanthar may have the firepower, but we've got heart, and plenty of tricks left up our sleeves. Ma'am, I'm not sure I would call using every available sock in the supply closet a trick," Lieutenant Jimerson quipped, his eyes gleaming with the characteristic humor that had made him Whitmore's most trusted officer. "But if it works?" Whitmore grinned. "I didn't say it was normal human ingenuity, but yes, we're using what we've got." They had called it the sock bomb, a simple but effective combination of old technology, human creativity, and a little bit of desperation. The idea had been pitched in jest, but after a few successful tests, it had become the key to their most recent success. The principle was simple. Make the Alanthar's advanced sensors so confused that they couldn't tell the difference between actual weapons and socks packed with explosives. It was absurd, yes, ridiculous even, but it worked. Clorbax watched in growing horror as another Alanthar cruiser veered out of formation, its systems blinking erratically. "What is happening?" he demanded, his voice strained. "Sir, the humans, they've launched another wave of sock bombs," Ezix reported, his expression an odd mix of disbelief and exasperation. "We cannot distinguish them from actual missiles. Our sensors are overloaded. What kind of nonsense is this?" Clorbax bellowed, turning away from the screen in frustration. "This is insanity. No enemy does this. No sane species would throw socks at a fleet." Ezix hesitated. I think they've found a way to turn our own technology against us, Admiral." "They're fighting dirty?" "Of course they are," Clorbax snapped. "Humans have never done anything by the book. It's not even a book they're using. It's a comic strip. And now we're losing to socks." Back on the USS Washington, Whitmore sat back in her chair, listening to the distant rumble of the battle outside. She took a deep breath and relaxed. Sure, the Alanthar had superior technology. They had the firepower, the precision, the knowledge of how to crush lesser species. But they didn't have one thing: the human knack for figuring out any situation, no matter how hopeless. "You know," Whitmore said, looking over at Jimerson, "I think the Alanthar might have just learned the first lesson about humanity." Jimerson raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" "We don't know when to quit." Her eyes twinkled with the unmistakable gleam of mischief. "We also don't care about how proper the battle is. We're not here to make you comfortable with our war style. We're here to win. And if that means using socks to throw off your sensors, so be it." Jimerson grinned. "I'll never look at Laundry Day the same way again." But despite the hilarity of their tactics, the Alanthar weren't about to give up. They regrouped, rearmed, and attempted to counterattack, this time focusing their firepower directly on the USS Washington. Clorbax ordered a full-scale assault, his forces surrounding the human flagship in a tightening circle of death. However, in the face of overwhelming odds, something remarkable happened. The humans didn't panic. They didn't falter. Instead, they dug in. Whitmore, calm as ever, gave orders for the fleet to fall back just long enough to lure the Alanthar into a trap. Her tactics were not about brute force, but about waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Alanthar, so sure of their inevitable victory, closed in. They believed they had the humans cornered. But they underestimated one thing: the resilience of a species that had survived centuries of war, famine, and hardship, always fighting for their place in the universe. With a well-timed burst of energy from the Washington's engines, the humans exploded out of the trap, charging straight into the heart of the Alanthar formation. The result was catastrophic for Clorbax's fleet. The Alanthar ships, still trying to recalibrate after their systems have been overloaded by the sock bombs and human unpredictability, struggled to defend themselves. The battle was turning in humanity's favor. Chlorbax watched, wide-eyed, as the human fleet shattered the remaining Alanthar ships with brutal efficiency. His pride, his empire, was crumbling in the face of a species that was, well, messy, a species that could never be understood by mere logic, and certainly not by conventional tactics. With a heavy sigh, Chlorbax turned away from the view screen and muttered under his breath, "We've underestimated them. The humans, they don't know when to quit. And maybe, just maybe, that's what makes them dangerous." But there was no time for further reflection. The humans had won, and Chlorbax was left with the painful realization that they hadn't just fought a war. They had fought the wrong species. And now, for the first time in his long career, Chlorbax was forced to admit humanity had proven its worth in the galaxy. Whether the Alanthar were ready for that truth remained to be seen.